The mind's potential lies beyond the realm of thought.
All right, welcome to the Being Now podcast, episode 4. We're going to be talking about the topic of how to maintain presence amongst others. So, Sean, if you want to go ahead and kick it off this time, I know I did last. What was your experience like this week in trying to maintain presence amongst other people?
Well, I wanted to have an approach with it, which was basically that whole being present in the moment. I wanted to, kind of just be that. I didn't want to, you know, some of the things that come to my mind when that is a topic is, like the ways that it's not is like when you're, checking your phone a lot. You're kind of like disinterested in what the people around you are doing or talking about. And um, I know that's for me because I've been that a lot in the past, right? And you know that's about as far as my intentions were for the way I was gonna kind of watch it come up in my life. But what I found was, well, first of all, I've been so incredibly busy that I haven't had time to do anything at all except just the things I'm doing, right? So I'm kind of forced to be within like a 5 minute window almost at certain times. And it's it's kind of cool, man. I end up in a place where I haven't had time to sit down and be bored, right? And I feel like that is just kind of making it so much easier for me to genuinely be interested in the things that are going on around me when I'm there, and that includes people, places and things. And I don't know, I've got an old friend that was my boss at a job that I worked at years ago, and I guess I'll just go ahead and tell this story. So his name is Ed. He was I act like he's still my boss. It's crazy, dude. I still think of him like that too, to be honest, and it's so
Yeah.
weird. But he was like the general manager of the Fort Riley Domino's, right? And so the way I met this dude was, first of all, I was at Manhattan, that store, and I got caught in the store by the owner with weed. Well, his son told on me, but whatever. Okay, so my punishment, right, was to go to Fort Riley because they do so much business that they don't have time uh, to smoke weed, essentially. Which that was some bullshit, but either way. So what happens is I get sent to this store that is doing all of this crazy amount of business, and that's like the view that I have, right? Like they are better than me because they do so much more business, right? And this Ed guy turns out to be one of the coolest dudes there. I didn't necessarily hang out with him outside of work, except for one time he let me drive his car, which was a Lincoln MK2 or whatever. It was a twin turbocharged thing, and it was insane. But anyway, you know, the Sean that he got to see, right, was uh, different from than who I am now. And we got back in touch with each other because I was trading crypto at one point, and then I moved up here, and it just so happens he lives in Topeka. And so we get together and we're hanging out. He actually came over to my place, and I start talking about this, this kind of thing I've been shifting into the last couple of weeks. And he, it just kind of hits me like there are other people that like know this already, right? Like this is not
Yeah.
some like grand thing that I'm just now discovering, which is great, but it's almost like, you know I have so much like that I've been unwinding to get to this point that I haven't even considered that. And so it's really wild when you meet people that are like already there, right? And they didn't have to mess their life up to do it. And I have a very big appreciation for those people because of just that, right? But anyway, um, I end up meeting his kids and his wife for the first time, and it ends up being me, Ed, and his wife sitting outside until about like 11 o'clock at night, just uh, really just like playing music and talking. And I mean, I think I was doing most of the talking, but that's I don't know, man. It seems like all I do is just engage with people when I meet new people. And I already knew Ed, but I had just met his wife, and so that thing was just taken off, and that was awesome. But um, you know, just that whole like understanding that about other people, and then I've done this thing in the past where I've tried to equate this with like a certain like spiritual thing, right? And it's almost like it is, but it isn't, right? Like um, this is just like a way I'm learning to live my life, and within that, I can be spiritual. And I've tried to make it the opposite, right, in the past. And now that I'm not doing that, I'm actually able to connect with people instead of separate myself from them. And that has been the thing I've seen the most in my life this week.
Yeah, so just so I can have some like clarification, I guess. Do you mean like before you were kind of taking an approach on like my life is spirituality and now the approach is spirituality is a part of my life? Is that like kind of what you're saying?
I think so because I there's this like stage of association, right? Like they call it stages of awakening, but it's not like you're awakening to anything. You're basically just shedding off bullshit. And I mean, seriously, dude, for real.
That is probably
Um,
the best fucking analogy I've ever heard. Yeah.
and I thought about that this week, right? Because really, like they describe these stages as like the association of I and M and the observer and the scene and all of that stuff. And really, when you just get down to it, we can sit here and talk in circles all day long about how everything I see is really created by my brain and what that might imply. But there is a reality, right? And we're in it.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It just seems like it's a shame that it took me 32 years of my life to get there. But dude, I'm so glad that I'm actually there and I know it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, man, I love that. At least it didn't take you like 60.
Who knows,
Younger.
man?
Some people don't even get to, experience the spiritual journey. It's really sad, but I
And
guess
that's what's
just be
crazy.
grateful.
Like, I consider this not a spiritual journey, but it is. Just because
Yeah.
it's wild, man. It's the best thing I've ever chosen to be a part of, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. So I guess my experience from this like past week with
Well, you
sitting
were
in the tent
sick.
and yeah, I was sick, so it made it it made it really hard to engage with anybody. I just felt like shit.
Well,
But
the yeah.
the days that I wasn't sick and like the days that I feel better, I still am sick, so kind of coughing a little bit here. My nose is still stuffy and it's really annoying. But the days before I got sick, I still had some time where I between our last episode and to the point when I got sick, there was like 4 days or so where I had that clear intention of maintaining presence amongst other people and staying really aware of myself and my surroundings. And one thing that I struggle with is like when I engage with somebody and I immediately like label what they're saying as either interesting or uninteresting. And if it's not interesting to me, I totally disengage. Like I totally am just, you know, I don't even like really look in the direction at all. And like I'll acknowledge them just because like I feel like a piece of shit if I don't. But it's still fucked up. And honestly, like So I've been really working on that, and especially this week, like even when someone's like explaining something that's really uninteresting, or someone that I typically find like really annoying, like there's this guy at work, and I love him so much. Like I love that he always wants to talk to me, and he finds comfort in me, and he thinks of me as a friend. But sometimes it's just like it's too much, and he just doesn't shut the fuck up. But
I'm probably that guy, right? Like that's who I am.
but so I that was like the main focus I wanted to take, was specifically my relationship with him. So going into the workplace the last few days, he's always as talkative as he normally is. And instead of like I felt those natural like programmed and conditioned thoughts come up, like, oh, shut the fuck up, like get away from me, why, that's not even it, why are you saying that, I let those come up, and then I analyzed them, and I was like, this isn't me, like
I was just gonna
this
say,
isn't who I
man.
am at my core, like I'm a loving and caring person, and everybody is at their core, right?
Yeah.
And so like sometimes just with our conditioning and the programming that we've built over the last however old you are, these natural thoughts might just come up, or they might seem natural, but it's not, it's just all a part of the conditioning, like I said. So I was able
Well,
to like see those. Go ahead.
I think kind of in the spirit of the thing we're aligning with, just by approaching it as I need to focus on this, right? Like the this was that he was creating like an attitude that you had to react to or something, right? And I don't know, maybe that's a way, because you said you were kind of taking the approach. You might have to say it again for me to remember, but um, like that was the thing you were going to focus on, right? Was your relationship with him, which I don't want to say for you, but it sounds like it already had a label on it before you even approached it, right? Does
Yeah,
that
and
kind of make
it
sense?
definitely is like, obviously it's for him, but definitely for me too. Like I want to go in and see like how the things that he's doing and his behavior, what it's bringing up in me that I need to unknot, right? Like
Ah,
these
yeah, for sure.
conditioning patterns I have, like I want to go into this cuz he's a person I know specifically triggers a lot of those knots and conditioning thought patterns I have. So I went out of my way to kind of put myself in his, presence while I was at work more often. So that way I can allow those triggers to come up. That way I can really start to tackle the problem. And like before, when I was doing this, like I would, have those thoughts and then immediately have that reaction. And that reaction was to exit, like walk away, disengage from the conversation however I could. Whether it was like, hey man, love to talk, I'm just really busy with work right now. Or, just kind of like pretending like I didn't hear him as I walked by or something. And, um, then I set the intention, like, I want to be aware of these feelings when they come up this time. Even I was aware of them before in a way. No, not really. I wasn't being aware. Never mind. Um, I would feel them and then I'd react. But that reaction was just a
Sure.
conditioned reaction, So coming into
Well,
it like this past week, coming into it with awareness of like that's not how I want to make him feel. That's not the energy I want to put out. And I want to also use this as an opportunity to sharpen my awareness. And this is a great opportunity to, like I said, undo those knots that I've just been kind of stepping away from and making excuses like, oh, I am busy with work, and finding ways to like justify why it's okay to disengage from a conversation. And
yeah,
even though it might be valid, I know it's still an excuse to not want to participate in a conversation. And the, that's not me. That's just conditioning. That's ego. That's, me or whatever, consciousness is compassion, love, and I need to appreciate that that's also what he is, and that's what makes it a lot easier being around people and being present with them, is understanding that whatever they're talking about and their behavior, if they're not aware of, some of the things you become aware of in a spiritual journey, might not know if their behavior is irritating or whatever it is. They're just expressing themselves the best way they know how. But regardless of however that conditioning that they've been exposed to when they were being domesticated through their childhood and their teenage years, underneath all that, there's still loving compassion with them too. And looking beyond their conditioning and yours, you'll be able to connect with people so much better. At
Well,
least that's what I've found.
this is like an extreme version of that, right? But it's like the saying, hurt people, right?
I love that saying.
But there was something that, because I had told you this week I didn't want to take the approach of, I'm going to do a bunch of research and then like go through that and then try to come up with something, right?
Yeah.
I specifically did not do that at all. And frankly, I wouldn't have had time to if I wanted to anyway. if I wanted to anyway. But there was a point where I was at work and I had some downtime and I just started typing some stuff out. And one of the things that just kind of came out of that was this whole this concept of uh, like the optimum level of awareness, right? When you start thinking about your environment as being an extension of yourself, um, you know, it's almost like you're not just you, like you are your environment, and what ends up happening is you know we want to be in this natural flow of things and to create the conditions for that to happen more often than not, and just kind of use that as a general way to go with things. And um, part of doing that is, you know, being, and it's weird because it's about awareness, but I'm going to say it anyway. Being aware of how aware you should be, right?
Mhm.
It's like being able to read the room, right? Um, you're not concerned about when you walk into a room, what's going on outside of that room. You're more concerned about the overall kind of feeling that people have, and the energy they're giving off. And those are the things that when you pick up on those and you focus on them, they really bring you into that moment, right? But there's the realization that there are moments going on everywhere. And so, like, where should your awareness kind of be? And I think that having a grounding in reality, and not just letting that just kind of take its course, and maybe being able to stop and be like, well, maybe I'm just considering too much right now, right? There's something in that for me, and I have been overlooking some of those things for sure.
Yeah. I actually had a conversation with a really good friend. I know I just kind of spoke on like one of, I guess what you'd say a negative experience was that I was having with somebody, but also on the flip side of like I had a really good conversation or what you label a good conversation with somebody else, and when I was talking to her, we were like, I love talking to her. I love hearing what she has to say. She always loves hearing what I have to say, but like I would get when she was talking and like she said something that like resonated or something that I had a lot of interest in, like what would happen is I would get really excited, and then it would like cause like a train of thought in my head, and then I would disengage from the rest of what she was saying, and then focus on what I was about to say because I was just so excited to share with her. And then this used to be a problem a long time ago too, where I would actually cut people off from what they were saying. But
Yeah.
a lot of people pointed that out to me. They're like, dude, like, I want to be a part of this conversation. I don't want to be, talked to. I want to engage with you. And I'm like, thanks for being bold about that. Hurt my ego a little bit, but um,
Yeah, I definitely still have problems with that for sure. But yeah, there's definitely something to that, and being able to you know be present in an entire conversation that way is definitely you kind of have to just let that thing come up, and just it's great that you resonate with it, and but maybe that's a cornerstone for how you could conceptualize the entire statement or whatever it is that they're making in the grander thing that they're saying, right?
No.
Because I definitely kind of discard everything else that was said, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I respond to, and that doesn't necessarily work out well for me most of the time. But
Especially in arguments.
man,
Someone brings up a point and then you just get hyperfixated on that point and dissecting it, and then everything else is just kind of, voices in the back of your head that you're hearing but not acknowledging.
well, it's I actually think that most arguments are really not even about the thing, right? It's about the way you're arguing and the words that you're using, and
Yeah.
so definitely for sure, because if I'm one of those people that gets caught up in that, you said this to me, and then I'm also trying to deal with, like the other things that you're saying that are just like, it's just a minefield. And
Yeah.
I got to be honest though, I haven't really had too much of that at all, really.
Yeah, actually, I had
Definitely
to
not recently.
I had an experience today that really helped me. Well, I wouldn't say help me. It was a great opportunity for me to practice staying present and staying aware when engaging with other people. I was dropping my daughter off with her mom, and me and her mom aren't necessarily on like, we're not on bad terms, but we're also just not like, we don't have a strong relationship right now. So I wouldn't say we're on like the best terms either. We're just like really neutral. And she asked if we could talk because she was feeling upset about some things that have happened. And just for privacy reasons for her, I'm not going to share a lot of what happened. Um, but a lot of like heavy stuff kind of went down over the last month. And so we sat in the car and we talked for like maybe 45 minutes, and she was like telling me like a lot of things that were affecting her, and that she really wanted to have a strong relationship with me and stuff. And in her sharing, how she felt and what she wanted from me, I immediately, my conditioned mind, that ego came up, and I could feel all those thoughts of like, well, if you didn't do this, and if you didn't do that, and if you didn't say this and behave a certain way, I would be more open to having a relationship with you right now. And I felt all of those things come up, but I didn't act or let them influence my mood or my behavior and my response to her at all. And that was like, it was kind of challenging a little bit because there's that ego that wants to say all those things and get my point across and wants them to understand why I feel the way I do, but in the end it like it doesn't really matter, like I what I did was recognize all of those, set them aside, and I just listened to how she felt, and I was able to have empathy for the way she felt. And I apologize that, some of the actions that I have are affecting her in a certain way, but I was still going to set those boundaries. And, for me, so that way I can, be healthy and everything too. And I was like, I still, if you ever need anything, I still got you. And, just right now is just not good timing, but in the future, I'd love to have a good relationship. But like I said, I felt all these things come up, and instead of projecting all of those when I didn't need to, I was able to stay aware of them and discard them, because I mean ultimately it's just a projection of my conditioning and what I agree with and what I don't agree with, and it doesn't necessarily make it right or wrong. Just like her perception of how things should be aren't right or wrong either. It's just two different perceptions. So trying to like force my perception onto her and get her to agree when it's not going to happen is a waste of energy and emotion on my end.
And there's this general kind of almost like a philosophy, I guess, that any kind of resolution is like a compromise, right? Like uh, it, anytime two people come to an understanding, there is a like a trade off, right? And that's, you know, whatever the individual parts of that about you're talking about, you know, they matter, right? But for the sake of what you're saying, they really don't. And so what I'm really talking about is um, there's this thing that happens when, you know, what you want to do is jump on those like buzzwords, right? And be like, oh well, this is, you know, this is really this, right? And kind of just do. It seems to me like that's what I've done in the past, is when I'm not on the same level as the person that's, you know, I'm having a conversation like that with. Um, that's why it quickly becomes something that's not about what they're really speaking about, right? Um, it becomes this thing where, just like you said, but what I'm trying to express is how you rectify that, and it's all those things you said. But for me, it's, you know, I'm not usually coming from a bad place with what I want to say, and it's still an attack on them, right?
Yeah.
Because they're still trying to get that whole thing across, and unless you can let that thing come across, it's not going to happen the way that they feel about it, because it's going to stop and it's going to get interrupted. And I think that that's probably something I deal with more so because I'm just now starting to like that whole brain dump and letting those things happen instead of like because I used to project even that on other people, definitely not in a bad way, but um, kind of letting that whole thing balance out um, is probably a good place for me to, or a good thing for me to let happen before I try to express upon other people's ideas, for sure, especially if I'm interrupting them, because attacking people is just like you're not attacking anybody, but anytime you interject in any way, that's kind of what it is, right?
Yeah, and it's
Um,
not like you said. It's not like you're attacking them, but they are going to be defensive of their point. You
right.
know, regardless if it's an attack or not. I mean, you're going to still defend your point if you have a strong attachment to the way you feel about something.
And so what I saw when you started saying that whole thing was that to really kind of try to understand the whole picture, I have to slow down. I have to, you know, really change what I'm doing. I have to listen, because that's not what I was doing before. And what happens when two people do that is really incredible, dude, because you just kind of get to this place where you understand kind of, you build this like working response, and it's not disingenuine, because to me it would, what you would say about that is you're waiting to respond, right, instead of listening to respond, type of thing. but
Yeah,
but really what you're doing is you're like building this like working kind of condition that's going to be where your response comes from, right? And it's more than just those buzzwords, it's everything as a whole. Because when I look at how someone speaks and they get up to one of those words, everything I say is based off of what they said up until that word. But when I allow it to be a complete thought that's expressed to me, and what's really hard for me about that is I purposefully like stop when I say things, right? A lot of times. And it's to give people openings to say things, right? Because, and this is probably why ultimately I have like the biggest problem with this. I'm an external processor, right? I don't think about things at all until we have discussion, and then I start thinking about them. And the only way I can do that is by talking to people about it. And people that don't do that and actually come up with what they want to say, like before and as they're saying it, wow, those people are incredible, because I
yeah.
cannot do that.
Did you read The Power of Now, right? By Eckhart Tolle?
Yeah, it's been a long
Yeah,
time.
he said one thing that he said that really stuck to me was what was it? He said the best gift you can give anybody is the gift of presence. And like you said, you just said one of my favorite words, and that's listening. Like, so many people think that this is like kind of a conclusion that I came to. They think that communicating with people is like key to building healthy relationships. I'm sorry. Like, you can communicate how you feel to someone and they can communicate to you how they feel all day long. None of it fucking matters unless you are both listening. Listening is the key to fucking healthy relationships. I went into, relationships thinking that communication is super key, like um with my last relationship, I would, communicate how I felt and she would communicate how she felt, and we both did that very strongly, but we weren't listening to each other when we were communicating. And that's what just that's why our arguments would just go and go and go, and they just never fucking stops because neither party was listening.
And
But
there's this.
go ahead.
Sorry. Well, I was going to
No, you're
say
fine.
there's this like concept I see arise out of that, which is a lot of things are not just one thing, right? And you kind of have to be able to consider a couple different moving parts at a time. And it's tough for me to do that, but I did not mean to interrupt you.
No, you're fine. The only thing I was going to add on to it, and this is like something I want to start doing in like my next relationship when we have, kind of different perceptions on what we perceive to be right or wrong, or what I guess you'd call an argument. This is what I did in my sales job. So when you're working sales, it's the same concept. Like, it doesn't matter how well you can talk and communicate to someone. You're not going to get the sale if you're not listening. Like, you have to listen to the other person. You have to get them to talk so that way you can find those cues that you can maneuver with, right? So like what I would do, and this is what they taught us, is on our waiver, because I worked at a gym, so my job was to sell memberships and sign people up. And we would have our waiver in front of us that they would fill out so that way they can exercise. But as they were talking, we would write on the paper, keywords that they would say. So like if there was something I wanted to touch back on, I wasn't sitting there thinking about it. I wasn't, taking my pen and looking down and just, scribbling shit, or, putting thought into what I was writing. I was just sloppy writing, looking them in the eye while I was writing it. Then if it was important, I'd circle in it. I would circle it. And if it was really important, I'd circle it again. So that way I don't forget it. I can bring it up later if I need to. But this way I'm not focused, it's not at the forefront of my mind. I can continue listening to what they're saying, right? And then that way, like I said, later in the conversation, if it's something I need to bounce back to or not, it's there, and it didn't take all my attention.
Yeah, there's a see so much of what I am working through is what we talked about uh, before when you said that comparatively like from you to me, I've spent more time uh, in knots than you have, right? And that's why we wanted to talk to those kids from Europe, right? um, because like I'm I feel like I'm coming from.
Really, we should give some context to that.
Okay. Well, I think I was about to, and
Oh, sorry.
no, you're fine. But it's like I'm coming from dealing with everything that's not like baseline reality, and that basically happened like 4 or 5 weeks ago, right? So in a way, like I have to like go through everything again, and maybe that's just the approach that I take. Maybe there's better ways to do it. I don't know that. I just know that this is how I do it. And what it looks like is me saying a whole bunch of words to try to come to a conclusion about something. And it's tough for me because I have all this like deprogramming I'm working through as I'm doing it. And um, that makes it really hard to follow an entire discussion and not focus on words because it's just tough that way. But I'm getting better at it for sure. But I speak about the context of these kids because that thing is incredible, dude.
Yeah.
Like,
So, yeah, like I said, you and me, you're 32, right?
yeah, and you're 23
Yeah.
or 24.
I'm gonna be 24 in
Yeah,
3 months. So,
yeah, that's just another we're opposite of the same thing, right?
yeah. So you have like, another 9 years of programming and conditioning to unbind for yourself, or versus me. And thankfully, that's something I was really grateful of, being on this journey at such a young age, because I was able to stop a lot of, what could have possibly been very bad habits, or
Well,
at least the habits I have deeply, more ingrained into mm, my brain,
the crazy part about that is I identify as like a kid, right? Like I don't see it as, because it's not a bad thing for sure, but I just see it as there's more there to work through, right? Like, it's just crazy like that because you're definitely right, but it's just, but anyway, let's go on about these guys because it's incredible.
Yeah, well, you had, more direct contact with them than me, but, you were saying that they're 15 and 16 years old, and they're on this
Yeah.
spiritual journey, and they're sharing a lot of like-minded thoughts with us. And I just think that that's so insane. Like, I could only imagine where I'd be, if I started this journey, 6, 7 years ago. And I'm sure you could imagine what it'd be like to start it 15 years ago or 16
And,
years ago. Like,
and that was the thing was when I was that age, it was I don't even know if like whatever it is I had to like work through knots of was even taking hold yet, right? I just know that the things that they talk about, which is like where their life is going and the direction that they're taking and knowing why they're doing that, like dude, I did not think about any of those things when I was that age.
yeah.
And like we're talking I think one of them was like 17, one was 19, and then that uh the the Catholic kid dude, he was like 15. I think he was 15. And like every single time they would say something, like it was just I was blown away, dude. They were talking about because I just sat there and listened. And that's probably what it was. Um, I kind of like walked off for a little bit because we were just kind of in a voice chat having a discussion and things were going really great. And it's weird, man, because they had all this respect for me because of everything that I've gone through, and it's I don't see myself like that, and just that in itself, right? Like it plays into this bigger thing that um, I just have so much respect for those kids because, you know, when I came back and kind of didn't let them know I was listening by interjecting and interrupting them, right? Um,
Mhm.
what I found was these kids were talking to each other about, you know, the best type of workouts for different muscles, right? But really, they were talking about that as like a side piece of why they're being healthy in the first place, and that ties into like everything that it's incredible, dude. Like having that much direction and presence of everything that you do because that's what it was to me. It was, you know, the presence part of it is like the fact that they're even able to consider all of these things and what it implies. And it that wasn't the conversation, but all of those things were at play. And I saw that because I definitely was not that when I was that age. And it was
Yeah.
incredible, dude.
I'm definitely, well, and for anyone listening, if they want to tune into a later episode, we're definitely going to be interviewing some of those kids, because I'd love to hear about their experience with, being on this sort of journey at such a young age, and how it affects their like social lives. And I have so many questions for them. So be on the lookout for that. Anyone listening right now, if they want to hear, the story about a 15-year-old on a spiritual journey, might be really interesting. And another thing
Yeah.
that you mentioned too that was really that kind of piqued piqued my attention, or got my attention, I should say. You said like how much respect they have for you, and how you don't really feel that way. You just feel like you're being, and you're just being with them. Just being present, right? It's not like you feel any sort of way about it. But then in turn, you have that respect for them, right? It's like, you view them as so young, and really, they feel the same way that you do towards them. And like, I had a similar experience, like my personal development group that I meet with every Saturday. They're all a little bit older than me. They're closer to like 30s, mid 30s. I mean, some of them are my age too, but they always say like, that, oh my God, I'm so impressed with like, you're 23, and you're, when they hear me talk and the things that I talk about, they're like, man, we're just so impressed by you, and we love that you're doing this at such a young age. And I'm just like, I just kind of brush it off, because I mean, my ego, sure, loves it, but I mean, like, I don't identify with my ego at all. But, I'm just like, no, I'm just like you guys. You guys are just like me. We're just being present, doing the best we can. But then in turn, here I am, looking at these 15-year-old kids. I'm like, dude, you guys are fucking awesome. Like, keep doing that shit,
Yeah,
like, I'm just
they
so
got
impressed
something
by
we
you
don't for
guys.
sure.
you know, and it's just funny the way that works. But
Well,
go ahead.
you had said that you identify with your ego, and
No, I'm sorry. I said I didn't identify. I don't identify with my ego. Like, I
right.
recognize how my ego feels, and I'm just like, okay, I know, compliments feel good, but let's get that shit out of here. You don't need to ego. You can stay dead. I'm
And
not gonna.
I know that's how you think about it, and so I'm not talking about you when I say this. I've definitely been this, but part of that like thing that I have to deprogram and like unknot is not drug use, right? Um, that is a big part of my life in the past, but that's not the thing I'm working through, and it's not like society and stuff like that. It's that mental like the identifying, because I didn't just identify with my ego and I didn't just separate from my ego. I either was that or I wasn't, right? And that whole line of thinking is what I'm breaking away from. And so I had another one of those conversations like you just talked about, and it was with someone that I really don't like, and at all. Um,
Yeah.
I'll just go out and say it was my brother's mom, so my stepmom, right? I have not had good interactions with her generally at all in the past. There have been moments that were nice and I felt like they were good when it happened, but um so what happened was my dad and my stepmom came up here for my dad had a doctor's appointment, and afterwards they came by and we went out to eat, and I was going on about all the things I was doing and all of this stuff, and you know um it's just wild because all of those things about the you know how the conversation flows back and forth with the when you don't interrupt and you kind of just let things kind of happen, like all of that was taking place, and out of that, like I had this like kind of working image in my head of like how she must have seen the way I was acting, right? Because I get so excited and I just can't like stop. Like I have so much energy now, it's completely ridiculous. I got to do something with it. And that pours into when I talk to people. And excuse me. Um, so I'm going through like all of these things that I'm doing and this, that, and the other. And there comes a moment where she just, because for me it's like you know all the lights are starting to come on upstairs, and I think when she heard that, she you know she stopped and kind of thought about it for a second, and what she said to me was I think the words were, you've always been this smart, right? and and that's kind of like what you were saying about the people in your development group, um saying they wish you would have, or they wish they would have kind of realized some of that the stuff that you did sooner, right? Which is also what we say about those kids. But really, like, I've always been and had the capacity for this, right?
Everyone does.
Everyone does. And I may be a complete total mess about how I express it, and that's fine, right? That'll get better as I
Most people
go.
do.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm almost like I almost am a child, right? In that sense. But this whole thing that has been going on in my life, and dude, it sucks that you have been sick because I haven't been able to talk to you as much as I normally do. And so I'm way too excited to actually have a conversation with you right now because I love you, dude. And not getting to talk to you as much as we do during the week kills me. It really does. But um, so that is new for me, right? Eventually it'll settle down, and that'll be fine. And I've seen parts of it that already have started to settle down. And I also see things that I know that I need to course correct on, right? Like parts of me that kind of have this sense of, okay, this is right. This is the right thing to do. And then my ego starts to go into it, right? It starts becoming an attitude I have towards people that don't do that thing or have that approach to that thing, right? And that's where I really need to slow down and be like, look, this is something that everybody has, and I'm could possibly be way off in some of it, right? But I just know that right now it's good. And the and that's the, you know, we talk about intentions a lot. And there's this kind of thing where if you're the things that you're doing in your life don't kind of fall in line with what you say your intentions are, you might be full of shit, right? And that's definitely not the case with me. I may be a total jumbled mess, and I may be working through all of those things, but dude, like, I'm actually, you know, making money more than I probably ever have been in my life. And as a consequence, I'm spending that money on my car and things I really don't want to spend money on, but that's besides
Same.
the point.
Same.
Right. It seems like as I have the capacity to make money, so does the capacity to have to spend it on things you don't want to also arise in proportion. Um, but anyway, that aside, right? Um, what came out of this whole, like, reigniting the friendship with Ed is maybe now I'm somebody that he would feel confident in working with, and that's actually happening, right? The thing that I've been doing that I haven't even, and I'm too excited. I got to slow down because I haven't been able to tell you about all the computer stuff we're doing about these nodes on the blockchain. And I, dude, we could do a whole episode about that right now, but it would just be me talking. So I need to stop.
One thing that I wanted to bring up, and you know, this is going to tie into the kid at work I was talking about earlier, and how I get irritated fairly. You know, I can feel irritated fairly quickly with him, and like how you said with your stepmom, how you don't like her, and you know, you guys have just different perceptions and you know, shit like that. Um, there's an Alan Watts quote that always, you know, helps me get over a lot of those feelings. And this is the quote. He says, "We seldom realize all of our very most personal and private thoughts and emotions aren't ours. We think in terms of languages and images which we did not invent, but were given to us by our society." And so, you know, keeping that quote in my head when I'm interacting with people and realizing that, and I know I kind of said this earlier already, but you know, realizing that this person I'm engaging with has a set of conditions, beliefs, and programs that they've, you know, acquired over the years and during their domestication, and that even though we may have different perceptions on things, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I can either like, I can hear what they're saying, and whether or not I agree or don't agree, if I do agree, I can engage in the conversation. We can just, relate and just have fun. But if I don't agree, I can just leave it at that without having to say anything, because
Right.
even though I don't agree, it doesn't, it what I believe is just a product of what was given to me by my society and the agreements I've made. Doesn't mean it's right or wrong. We just, two different people coming from like two different societies or whatever, and it's just that. And that helps me be a lot more aware when I'm engaging with somebody, and how I can like feel a certain way about what they're saying, let that go and not attach to that feeling, and still have a bond or connection with them and find something that we can relate on and still have a good, relationship, instead of just like, oh, you don't think the same way I do and you don't want to accept how I, the beliefs that I have, so you can fuck off and kick rocks, because I used to do that. I'd be
Well,
like, fuck you, get out of my face.
sometimes the opposite of that is true. The fact that you don't engage at all, right? It might be that you just don't have anything to say about it, or whatever it is, and it's almost like if you don't. And this is for people that get, I don't want to like use a term, but like people that kind of just seem to pick fights with people, right? With words and through discussions. It's like if you don't respond in the exact way that they put all that time and all those words into, how, because they have this idea of this thing and they have all these words attached to it. And so they express that. And if you don't respond in a way that aligns with that, sometimes they get upset, right? And that's kind of what I saw out of what you were saying about that whole thing. And because they're not considering the fact that it's not good or bad, right? It's just what it is. And I am glad that you brought up the what I said about uh, my stepmom, because I didn't really bring that to a conclusion, and there was a conclusion to it, right?
Hmm.
So what happened was, after we ate, we went back to my apartment and kind of like being in like baseline reality and being present in the moment, and letting that really just be a powerful thing, the way she expressed what she said about, I've always been that, and I'm just now tuning into it, kind of thing. Um, I engaged with her, right? So we came to the apartment, and I said, I've lived here for 2 months, and I don't have anything on my walls. Um, and so I asked somebody that I generally don't like what I should put on the walls, right? Um,
Hmm.
I don't care what her opinion is, you know, or at least I didn't in the past. You know what I'm saying? Like that's what my approach was. And so what I did about it was, well, maybe she's a real person who is just like me, because I'm a person. What would she have to say about putting stuff on my walls? And like I sat there and I watched her like actually look at the walls, consider things, and give a an answer, right? And I was blown away, dude, just by her approach. She identified areas of the walls that are, because I've got some like a TV and my computer stuff, and that kind of takes up some space. And she looked at bigger spaces and thought, put things there. And so I'd need to get a plant for the corner of my apartment, and then I showed you that poster I bought.
No, yeah,
And,
the Lao Tzu,
yeah,
Lao Tzu
and
quote.
yeah, and I'll go ahead, and I think I can just say it because it's when you're when you're experiencing anxiety, you're living in the past. Dang, I already messed it up.
But yeah, that's flip.
Say it because you know it.
So I think it's when you're living in or when you're feeling depression, you're living in the past, and then when you're feeling anxiety, you're living in the future.
Yep. And when you're experiencing peace, you're in the present moment.
Yeah.
So anyway, um, because of that and allowing that to kind of happen, what happened after that is I called my dad because I wanted to talk to him about something, and she answered the phone. And in the past, I would have just disengaged from the entire what the conversation could be, right? I would have just been like, "Hey, can I talk to dad?" And that would have been it. Instead, it was, "Oh, you answered the phone," right? Like I was actually happy to talk to her,
Yeah.
and I even like commented on that, and she knew what I was talking about because you know I'm not the only one who didn't enjoy that relationship. You know what I mean? Like, she definitely did not enjoy me the way I did not enjoy her. Right.
No.
So being able to have like that, it was just really cool to, that's something we can build on and have an actual genuine relationship now that maybe could have always been there. And I was the one that was messing it up. Right. And that's not going to be the case anymore. So,
Yeah, that's so awesome. I love to hear that. And I actually like I've had similar experiences, with that and specifically working at the gym just because I was interacting with so many people from, very different like demographics, I guess. And it was like, a lot of times I get people in front of me that, they would say things that I didn't agree with or, I had a solution for, but they also just weren't ready to hear it. So I'd have to like just kind of watch the way I talk a lot of the time. And like a lot of those skills that I learned being a sales manager, I took into like just talking to people outside of work and my social skills and the amount of friendships I've been able to create and strengthen relationships I do have increased substantially. Like it working a sales job really taught me to listen. And it's like, someone can say something now to me and I can totally disagree with it. I can feel, I might have emotions or thoughts that might rise up almost instantly, but I can push past those or look past them and not interact with them internally. And they can say something that I don't agree with, and I can ask questions. I can be genuinely interested on why they think the way they do or why they feel the way they do, and I can keep asking questions. And then what that does is people love to share. People love to be heard because how often do you actually how often do people engage with each other where, like we said earlier about the communication thing, where people just talk and talk, but they don't listen? How often do people actually get to feel like they're listened to? And
well,
to be that for somebody is
not just
so
that.
fucking powerful.
What you're really doing is you're like approaching how they came to how they feel, right? And that's something that maybe they don't even consider themselves. And when they get to explore that, they're so incredibly thankful, or at least I am, when people ask me those type of questions because I'm expressing an idea and then they're asking how I got to that idea. And
Yeah.
maybe I don't know. And maybe just by them asking, I'm like, holy cow, you just blew my mind. Right. And that happens so often to me now.
Yeah, and
And,
it was like a realization that I came to like when I was going through my depression and I was just reaching out to so many people, and not a lot of people were very responsive. They'll be like, "Oh, it's the typical, oh, you'll get through it," or "If you ever need me, I'm here." But it's like, no one's like actually taking time, and like I don't, back then it was a poor um like expectation to have because people are also going through their shit, and it's not right for me to expect them to put their life on pause for my shit because a lot of times people don't have the emotional space to deal with my shit on top of everything else that they're going through. So I grew up a little bit going through that, but then when I did have those people that and it's more recent now that I'm not dumping all my shit onto other people, but just genuinely asking how they are, and then in turn they do the same for me, and it feels so amazing because I feel like the connections that I have with people now, like people are actually interested in, just like you, in getting to know me, and they're listening, and it's such a heartwarming feeling. And knowing that now you're, once you feel it and you know how that feels and you start providing it for other people and you know how they feel, and then you guys
that's
both
love.
come to that same awareness. Like I had a conversation with someone about it and we were both like, dude, this is awesome. Like we both, like, you listen to me, and I was like, I know. And I listen to you, you listen to me, and I love it. And we have such a strong connection. Dude, it's fucking amazing.
Well, there's you know, having gone through as much of that as I have in the past and seeing it now, it also makes it so that you know, when I'm being that thing that engages with those people in that way, and they don't uh, seem to notice that's what it is, because they're what I was in the past, I'm now also able to, when that happens, not, you know, I'm able to understand that, you know, maybe they just have some shit going on in their life right now, and that's okay, right? Um, like, the random guy that I meet in the aisle at the grocery store, when I ask him how he's doing, and I'm willing to sit there and have an hour long conversation based on what he says, right? Because I'm in the moment and I got nowhere else to be at that time. When he just says I'm fine and walks off, right? I don't have to take offense to that anymore,
Mhm. I have a
because there was a
really
time when I did.
I have a really funny story to share with you, and this just goes to show how powerful listening actually is. Okay,
Uh-oh.
so
Uh-oh.
it's so
I'm
funny. So I was working at the gym, and I had an appointment show up. And so he's an older gentleman. I want to say he was like 60, 65, something like that. And he was a war veteran. And so we're sitting down, and he immediately, within 5 minutes, jumps the conversation from his goals and physical fitness to politics. And I fucking hate politics. I don't give a shit. And so we're sitting down, and he's like asking me these questions, regarding politics. I'm like, I'm sorry, man, I don't really, engage too much in politics, and I'm pretty cut off from the news and social media, so I really don't know what's going on. And he was like, so you don't watch the news? And I was like, no, I don't, man. He's like, you need to start watching Fox 13 News right now. And I was like, oh, God, I don't have cable. And he was like, see, that's what's wrong, with America, is people like you. They don't want to take time to educate themselves. They don't want to do this, and they don't want to do that, and, help better America. And I was like, immediately, I felt like my ego get, a little triggered, but I was like, I'm going to use the power of listening, and I'm going to touch this guy's heart. And so I was like, you know what, man, you're right. I should educate myself. What do you got for me? What are some podcasts you could recommend, or something where I can go learn about politics, and any YouTube videos you got? And then he jumped into like his bank of knowledge that he has, and just unloaded everything. He was like, if I was younger, I would have ran for president. And I was like, dude, with everything you're sharing with me, no doubt you'd win. And so I asked him, I was kind of dicking around there, but I did ask him some genuine questions, and I just got interested. And then by the end of the conversation, at that point, I've maybe said like 4 or 5, words, maybe 6 in total. And we had an hour-long conversation. And I said like 6 words, and the rest of the time I just listened. And those words were just questions. And we got up. He didn't get a membership. He was like, you are one of the brightest young men I have ever spoken to. He was like, I don't even care. Like, I may or may not come join, but I'm going to come back tomorrow. I'm going to give you $20 just because I appreciate you. And had I not listened, he would have not felt that way, right? And had I
that
not been genuinely interested, it's just crazy, man.
I want to go back and tear through everything that happened in that what you said, but I'm not going to.
We can do that
But
in our own time.
yeah, because I definitely want to. But anyway, you're right. When people are invited to express themselves in a way that is just received with no filter, they I don't get that very often. Well, I haven't
Nobody
gotten that.
does.
No, listen, okay. I get that all the time through you, but you've been sick and I'm tired of it. Okay? That's why
I'm sorry.
I'm so crazy right now, because we're doing it now and there's so much to go through, dude. So
Yeah.
if you don't have that with somebody, what we're saying, that's how you go get it, right? Um
Yeah,
I
you
think
just
that,
be that for other people, and then
yeah.
you'll start to attract the people that want to reciprocate that same energy. Or like what I did is, I went on an app on my phone called Meetup, and I definitely recommend it. You can find groups in your area that are on the same journey, like spiritual journeys, or if you have specific hobbies, you can type that in the search bar too and go find like-minded people. But then the first time that I went to my self-dev group, they like all the attention was on me. They were so interested in knowing me and why I was there, and they just kept asking me so many questions, and I felt so good being appreciated for being a fucking person with some thoughts and feelings. And another thing that really stuck with me that I learned from the gym was like, my manager told this to me, and he was like, the person that talks the most in the conversation always feels like the conversation went better than how the other person would feel about it. So kind of keeping that in the back of my head too, like ask questions, get people engaged, get them talking, get them opening up, and then share how you feel. But still keep it short unless they ask. If someone doesn't ask how you're feeling, you don't need to share, because honestly, if you do, they're probably gonna half listen because they're not that interested. Otherwise, if they were, they would ask.
So, what do you think next week should our topic be? Because
Um,
whatever this was, it was great, dude.
yeah,
I I purposefully didn't do research, and that's why I say it's great. Because I didn't have more knots to go through,
no,
um, which would have been the research, right?
yeah. I thought
So
for this topic, I took like maybe 20 minutes after our last episode to think about it, and I was like, I'm tired. I'm gonna go to bed. And then I got sick and just totally didn't even think about this topic
life
at
is
all this
crazy,
past
dude.
week, except for the intentions that I set, which was to practice it. But as far as like trying to dissect and analyze things further, didn't really happen all that much. But
So let's
I
see.
definitely what because we were talking about ego earlier.
Mhm.
I definitely would enjoy um, ego death and exploring that a bit.
All
I
right,
think
that's
that would
it.
be really interesting.
So how do we phrase it? Let's say,
It can just be ego death.
okay,
You
yeah,
think?
yep. I was gonna say separation from ego, but that's perfect.
Ego
Same
death.
thing. Same.
Yeah. I'm already really excited to talk about that. I got excited earlier just talking about
Dude,
ego, so that's why I felt like this would be a good
it
topic.
if you want to, we can just keep recording, but we shouldn't.
Yeah.
I want to,
But
um,
yeah,
but all right. So take us
ego
out.
death it is. Yeah. All right. So definitely amazing talk with you today, Sean. I'm really glad that we got to talk, a little bit more today, because like you said, we haven't talked at all the past week.
It's been killing me.
Um, but yeah, for
It
anyone
hurts.
listening, for anyone listening, hopefully you're able to take some of the tools that we've used to engage with people in a healthier way. And hopefully you guys start listening more and being more present for others. And in turn, I hope the same for you from others. And with that, we will see you next week on the topic of ego death.